G'day folks, Andy here from Aussie Homesteads. Today what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the world's most simple solar system. And it's going to do 12 volts and we're going to convert it over to 240 volts. So say you bought yourself a little cabin in the woods, or you've got yourself a caravan on site or whatever, and you want power. Easy peasy. Okay, up on the roof up there is a 30 watt panel. Just a standard 19 volts open circuit panel, 30 watts. And that line comes down and it goes right into this controller, and it says there panel positive, negative, battery positive, negative, and that cable there will run to the battery. Okay, so now let's have a look at the different types of batteries that it can charge. This is called a PWM controller, and it's not as efficient as an MPPT controller, but PWMs are really cheap. And you can actually select what type of battery that you want to charge. A lot of them are automatic, but this one isn't. You can see B3. Now B3 is lithium phosphate, or LiFePO4. Okay, now you can change that to B1, B2 or B3. B1 is your standard car battery, flooded lead acid battery that's in your car. Everybody's got one, and you can charge it using these controllers. And they will step the power down from that 19.75 volts, or whatever the open circuit is on that panel up there, down to 12 volts. And you can see this one's currently charging, and my battery level says 11.1, because I've just put the battery on and I'm just charging it up. So B1 is flooded lead acid batteries, car batteries. B2 is lithium ion batteries, and B3 is lithium phosphate. So let's have a look at the different types of batteries. I've got a few set up here for you just to show you the difference. This is inside this little battery box. It's just a standard car battery, nothing flash. 600 cold cranking amps. It's actually out of my Toyota Corolla actually, and I've mounted it in a box. That way I can plug in different types of inverters, and there are many different types of inverters on the market, from the cheapest one being 300 watts. So it says 300 watts. And 600 watts is the peak. So in other words, it'll push 600 watts for a very short time. But anything more than 300 watts, and these things don't like it. Standard 240 volt outlet. So it is 12 volts from the battery box, and I use Anderson plugs on everything because they don't like to pull out like car type sockets do. So Anderson plug straight to the back of that, and that converts 12 volts to 240. If you wanted a bigger one, you can get the $68 one off of eBay. I'm not putting the brands up because I'm not sponsored and I don't promote any particular brand. They're all just as good as each other pretty much. This is a 1500 watt peak, so it'll run bigger stuff. So if I wanted to run this power drill, I could run it off of that one, but I couldn't run it off of that one because that one isn't big enough. This is a 500 watt drill. Okay, so let's talk about different types of batteries. This is a lithium phosphate battery, LiFePO4 as it's known, and it's 100 amp hours. So something at 1 amp will run for 100 hours, in theory. Okay, so now you're thinking to yourself, well, why can't I just get one of these little cheap batteries that are in backup power supplies and use one of them? It distinctly says 12 volts, 9 amp hours. So that's about 10 or 11 of those for one of those, isn't it? All right, well, I ran an experiment for you so you don't have to bother doing it yourself. I strapped 6 of them together in series. So you got positives to positives, and positives to negatives, and negatives to positives, and all that, and link them all up, bring it out into a double outlet and into a single Anderson outlet, and then you could plug your inverter into that. So just take that Anderson plug out, put it into that. So 6 batteries at 9 amp hours is 54 amp hours, isn't it? So you think that's half of that. This is a $229 battery. These, you can pick them up on Marketplace on Facebook or on Gumtree. You can pick them up for $1 each. I think the dearest one I've ever seen is $10 each. If you want to buy one from me, they're at eBay, they're about $23. And they will run a very small inverter that you could run a box fan. And this is a 31 watt box fan. And you can see it's going. And it's running off of that tiny little inverter. A 300 watt inverter from a 12 volt car battery, converts it to 240 volts. So you could run a box fan or all types of things off of that. You can also plug your phones in, charge your phones. If you get a battery box, they've already got a 12 volt outlet. So you can see that the 12 volt socket just fits straight into there, and this one happens to have a little gauge on it so I can tell what the voltage is. And when you lift up the other cover, it's got chargers there for your phones. 2 Henderson plugs, so you got one for your in, because remember I had that solar system up on the wall up there, so that line comes all the way around and plugs into this box. And it's currently charging this battery. And at the moment, we're sitting at about 10.1 volts, and you could see by that gauge over there that it's going up because the sun's shining. So literally you're getting electricity for free. See, it's at 10.7 now. Another word of warning too on these cheaper PWM controls. If you want to spend a few extra bucks and get an MPPT controller, they're a hell of a lot more efficient. You lose about 15-20% of your power just from the conversion and electronics that are in these things. They're as cheap as chips. This is $11 off of eBay. And this is a 10 amp solar controller. You get 10 amp, 20 amp, 30 amp. Of course, the bigger that you go, the more panels that you can put on it. But because I've only got a 2 amp panel on the roof at 30 watts, I don't need to go above 10 amps. I'm still well within the safety limits. USB ports on these things, I never ever use them. There's a lot of videos out there saying don't use them, and I've never actually charged a phone off of these things. They're supposed to run at 5 volts. The electronics is stepped down inside there, and you're supposed to be able to charge a phone. I haven't actually done that. I just use my power supply. See the fan going around and around? Alrighty, so what happens if we want to run something a bit bigger? Well, let's plug it into the lithium phosphate battery. And when I switch this on, let's light her up. It gives me a battery level. It's currently sitting at 12.3 volts. That's this battery. And it's running at 240 volts. Now, what can I run off that? Well, if you have a look down here, there's a massive, big fan running. And that sucker is 140 watts. So it's a pretty big fan. And that will run that all day off that one battery. So why couldn't you just link 2 batteries together? Well, of course you can. All you're doing is increasing your amp hours. You're not increasing your voltage. If you go positive to positive, negative to negative, all you're doing is doubling your amps, not your volts. Okay? Now, how do we measure how much power we're consuming? Well, you can get a plug-in power meter. I'll get you in close. Now, this big fan that's running down here on the floor is pulling 10 point something up the top left here. 9 point something amps, say about 9 amps, and it's pulling 130 peak watts just off that one battery. So that one battery is running through this watt gauge, and I can tell you, it tells you how many watts that it's pulling, and it gives you the voltage as well. Through this 1500 watt inverter, and then down to that big fan at 140 watts. So that's quite a powerful battery to be able to run that fan. Alrighty, so if I don't want the fan, what if I want to use a drill? Well, I couldn't use it on that one because that's only 300 watts. This drill is 500 watts. So I can plug it into the inverter. These inverters, most of the big ones, come with 2 outlets. So I've got the fan plugged in one and the drill in the other. And I can run that drill off of that 1500 watt inverter. That's 1500 watts of usable power, right? So that means it'll probably peak around 2000 watts, but only for a very, very, very short time. But again, people say, well, why can't I just start with a really, really cheap, simple battery and just go and get one of these $20 batteries? Well, you can. Plug that into that 300 watt inverter at $20 for this 300 watt inverter. And bingo, you can run yourself small items for a very short period of time. If you want more power, bank them up. It'll nowhere near perform as well as that one right there, because these things have massive capacity. And this is a brand new one, so this will actually be going in the caravan up at the block, and it'll run the whole caravan. That's charging our computers, charging our phones, and everything else that we want to charge. And we had 4 car batteries in there. And they were brand new batteries, lead acid, flooded lead acid batteries, just standard good old car batteries like this. And this will outperform those 4 batteries. Now remember, this is not lithium ion. They've got a bit of a bad reputation, but lithium phosphate is very, very safe. The chances of one of these setting on fire is 1,000,000,000 to 1. They've actually got more chance of getting run over by a bus. It's just the chemistry within the actual battery that protects them from setting on fire. And they're really, really safe and really stable. And of course, they're not filled with any liquids or anything, so you could mount them any direction that you like. Same as this one, this is not a lead acid battery. So I can put this on its side, I can put it on its end. And these batteries you'll generally find are in uninterrupted power supplies. And we've got one up in the house that we use for the internet, so that if we lose the power for some strange reason, one of the circuit breakers trips out or I've overloaded the circuit, it'll battery back up my internet, and all it uses is one of those, but that runs on 12 volts. Alrighty, so Anderson plugs, they're as cheap as chips, guys. They're $10 for 10 of them or whatever off eBay. You just put your wires in the end and use a crimper. So use the bigger setting on your crimper, the yellow one down there, and just put your wire in there and crimp your wires so they sit in there. Crimp your wires, positive and negative, and you can't get them around the wrong way because they're actually labelled plus, minus. You really can't push those in the wrong way. So crimp one onto the red, one onto the black, and stick them in the right holes. And then when it comes time to be able to plug something in, you can't plug them in the wrong way. They only fit one way. If you try to put it in that way, it doesn't fit. So you really can't get them around the wrong way. Alrighty, so these PWM controllers, this is a 15 amp PWM controller, and that one was about $22 or something off of eBay. They're not expensive, but it's a cheap way to get started, guys. It really is a very simple system. If you get a battery box like this one, they've got circuit breakers on them, so in the case you overload, it'll be just thermally trip out or electronically trip out. And they've also got a kill switch on them, so you can actually turn the power off and everything stops running. So that isolates your power. Now, remember that the solar's coming into the battery to charge the battery from the PWM controller. It charges into the battery. The battery's connected to the Anderson plug. You see the red and the black? 12 volts out, going from 12 volts Anderson down to a 240 volt inverter. And remember, this one's only 300 watts, but it will run box fans and anything under 300 watts. It struggles to do that one, but it will run it, just not as much power. But okay, so what if we want to tap into some power? And how much are we using at 240? We know darn well how much we're using at 12 volts, don't we? Because this gauge tells you. How much am I drawing? Okay, so there is a 240 volt version of it. And these things, again, just get one on eBay. This one actually came from Aldi. And it'll tell you how many watts or amps that I'm going to be drawing. So there's kilowatts. That's my voltage supply at the moment. It's sitting currently around 247.1, and that's pretty good, pretty stable. Alrighty, there's your amps. So we want to know 50 hertz, which is Australia, runs on 50 hertz. So let's go back to watts. Currently it's drawing nothing, but I've got a 240 volt, another 500 watt drill plugged into that 240 volt wattmaster. Just cover your ears because I'm going to make the noise because I'm going to turn the drill on. So just be warned that there's some loud noise coming. But watch what the watts does. See how it peaked at 454.8 watts. So that's another way of knowing how much power you're drawing, is you could plug this into the 240 volt socket. You could actually plug it into the inverter, into there. And you'll know how much you're pulling at 240 watts. 240 volts, sorry, not watts. So there you go. That's just a very, very simple system. So what are you looking at? 30 watt panel, $28 to $30 on eBay. 10 amp controller, PWM, is about $11, $12 delivered. If you want an MPPT, which is a hell of a lot more efficient, then you're going to pay about $30 for about a 10 amp one. But the PWMs, I've been running them up at the block for donkey's years, and This is outside. This is not actually inside, guys. So this is out in some of the worst conditions you could possibly, you couldn't throw much worse at it. And it's proving itself to be very, very reliable. And I've put it outside for a reason. I want to know how good these things are. So I'm pushing it to its limit because of the condensation at night time. So that's a very, very simple system on how to set up your 12 volt to 240 volt system. So if there's any questions that you got or anything that you're stuck on, just let me know and chuck a comment down in the comments, and I'll certainly get back to you. But that's Andy signing out from Aussie Homesteads at the moment, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye for now.